Hello and welcome to the Fusion 360 Masterclass. My name is Steven and I'm the course instructor, and I'm very excited to have you in this course. So this course is very comprehensive and you'll get as much out of the course as you're able to put into it. So there's a lot of really small lessons where I go through all of the different features in Fusion 360, well, almost all of the features. And yeah, so I recommend going through all of those lessons first and then approaching the projects. That way you have a very solid foundation. Once again, I'm very happy that you signed up, and I'm glad you're here. And this is a very good skill set to have in life. It's very applicable for a lot of things. If you want to make anything yourself, or create products or just fun things, then having the ability to 3D model and 3D print something is definitely necessary for that. Once again, my name is Steven, and I'm glad you're here, and I know that you'll learn a lot. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief overview of Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is a very powerful and easy to use CAD or 3D modeling software that allows you to essentially design almost anything. So here is a marble machine that I designed. I could rotate around it, I could change a bunch of the features of it, and you can see here from a list of my projects, I've designed numerous different things. You could really pretty much design anything in Fusion 360. The only constraint is if you have a very complicated design, it could start to lag if your computer is not powerful enough. But I love using Fusion 360. It's a really great program, very powerful, very easy to use. So I'm looking forward to teaching you all about it, and I hope you're excited to learn, because this is really a great program and I highly recommend it. In this video, I'll show you how to download the free version of Fusion 360 for personal use. Go to the Fusion 360 page at autodesk.com. Go to Download Free Trial. And here you'll see the option for Fusion 360 for personal or hobby use. Click Get Started. And it'll probably ask you to sign in. I've already signed in, but you'll need to sign in or create an account, and then you'll probably have to click Get Started again, and this will lead you to the download page. Sometimes it changes a little bit depending on how you get to the page or where you're coming from. But that's the basic way to download the free version of Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to save your project in Fusion 360. So when you first open up Fusion 360 for the first time, you'll have an untitled design. To save the design, click the Save button on the top left. Fusion 360 saves all of the designs inside of the cloud. You can name the project. Actually, I'll call it Design because technically it's a design. And you can choose the location of that design. Click the drop-down arrow here, and you can choose a project to save your design in. I think by default, it should have just the admin project. To add a new project, just click New Project, and you can name it whatever you want. And inside of the project, you could add new folders and save your design into a new folder just like that. So I have my Fusion 360 Lessons project, and I have my folders inside of there. So I'll save this in my Getting Started folder, and I'll just call it Design 01, and then just click Save. So that's how you save designs in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be giving you a very quick overview of Fusion 360's user interface. So the main portion of the screen is the viewport, and this is where your design is located. On the top, we have all the different tools and different tabs for other tools as well. We have our browser. We have the different workspaces. We have a timeline on the bottom and different navigation tools. I'll be going over everything in detail later on in this course, but that's a brief overview of Fusion 360's user interface. In this video, I'll show you how to change your document settings and the units for your project in Fusion 360. The document settings are found in the browser, and you can click the drop-down arrow to open up the units. Click Change Active Units, and here you could switch between different unit types: centimeter, millimeter, meter, inch, or foot. And that's how you change the units in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll give you a very quick example workflow. This is going to be a brief overview of how I typically approach a project. In Fusion 360, there's a thing called sketches, and I'll be going over these things a lot more in detail later in the course, but I thought it'd be a good idea to show you just a very quick overview of the basic process and how Fusion 360 is used. So I'll click Sketch. I'll click one of these planes, and I'll draw a quick sketch. I'll show you what everything is doing later on in the course, but there's my basic 2D sketch. I'll click Finish Sketch, and I'll extrude that sketch, and that'll give me a solid body. If I want to move one of the faces, I just right-click on the face and go to this quick shortcut here that says Move and Copy, and I can move the face like so. I could also create a box on this top face, and if I pull this down, it'll cut this box shape out of the solid object. So this here is considered a body. It's found underneath this body drop down, and I could rename it Shape. I could round off corners, and with just that there, you could already make a lot of cool things. But I'm going to go into all the different settings. That way you'll have all the tools you need to make whatever you want, and know how to use Fusion 360 to the best, fullest extent possible. In this video, I'll introduce you to the timeline functionality of Fusion 360, as well as parametric modeling. These are two of the best features and two of the coolest features in Fusion 360. So starting off with the timeline, here on the bottom is my timeline. I could go back anywhere in history and see where I was at that current stage of the project. You could skip forward, as well as go all the way back to the very beginning, and you can even click play, and you can see the entire process of how the shape was created. Now, the cool thing about parametric modeling means that, say I want to make a small design or a small change to this design in the future because something has changed, I have a different consideration or something like that, And let's say instead of having this cut into the shape, maybe I want this rectangular shape to stick out. So I could double click on this extrude, and I can actually change the distance. Actually, I clicked the wrong one. It was this box shape here. Instead of having it go down, I could just let's see, if I do type 5 and I don't want it to do cut anymore, I could click join. Now the rectangular shape is sticking up, and you can see now I've added that rounded curve there. So I could change anything in the past. I could even go back and change the sketch. So let's say I want this corner to be in a little bit like that. I've now changed the sketch, click finish sketch, and it'll go all the way back to the current spot in the timeline with that correction. You just want to be careful. If let's say I made a change like this, the rectangle's here, so it'll mess up that rectangle shape that I added. I'll show you. Well, actually, it was pretty smart, and it didn't really mess it up. Sometimes you'll get an error, but other times the program is smart. So that's a really cool thing about the timeline feature. I'll correct that really quick. I can just go back and correct it, and the whole model is corrected just like that. I can even change the fillet size. Let's say I didn't want it to be as rounded. I can just change it to 2 and have a smaller fillet. So that's parametric modeling and the timeline feature in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll give you a quick overview of the data panel in Fusion 360. To access the data panel, click Show Data Panel by clicking the button on the top left of the screen. Here you will see all of your projects. I think when you first start Fusion 360, you'll only have Default and Admin, but I don't quite remember. If you want to add a new project, just click New Project, and you can name your project whatever you want. Inside of a project, so let's go to my Fusion 360 lessons, you could create folders, and inside of the folders, you could access your saved files. So that is a quick overview of the data panel in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be showing you one update that Fusion 360 has made to its data panel. And this is new for the end of 2020 and 2021. So now you could only have 10 editable documents. You could still access all of your old designs, but you could have only 10 active files open at one time. Well, you can actually open more than 10 files, but after 10 they are only read-only. And if you run out of space in your Editable Documents folder, all you have to do is click on this button here, and you can switch over that design to be read-only. It'll give you this warning here. At any time you could actually make the file editable again, so it's not very much of a big deal to make it read-only. So now I have 7 active designs, and I could easily switch between these and continue working on them without having to make them editable again. So that's a new feature that Fusion 360 has added for 2021 now, and it's not too much of a big deal. You just have to switch between editable and read-only depending on which project you're working on. And you can access that folder here in the All Projects section of the data panel, and you just click on the My Editable Documents here, and here's all of your recent editable documents. If you run out of space, once again, just click Read Only, and if it's a read-only project, let's say I go back into here, this one is read-only, or actually here's this one here, I could switch it back to editable, and it's really easy, and it's not a big deal at all. So that's a new change to Fusion 360, editable and read-only documents. In this video, I'll show you how to navigate around the viewport in Fusion 360. It's important to have a mouse with the middle mouse button because you'll be using it a lot. It's not necessary, but it really helps to have the middle mouse button. To pan side to side, click and hold the middle mouse button. To rotate around your object, hold Shift and hold down the middle mouse button. There are two different types of orbits in Fusion 360. You could orbit with Constrained Orbit, which is set as default, or you could use Free Orbit. Free Orbit does not feel as controlled, and I prefer to use Constrained Orbit. If you don't have a mouse, you could pan by clicking the pan button on the bottom. You could zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. If you don't have a mouse wheel, you could zoom in and out with the zoom button on the bottom of the screen. You could also click Fit to fit the object in the viewport. In this video, I'll be going over the View Cube in Fusion 360. The View Cube is a helpful tool that lets you rotate the camera to different orientations. So right now, if I orbit around in my scene, you can see the View Cube will also orbit. If I want to look at my object from the front view, all I have to do is click Front on the View Cube. I could go and look at any side of my object. I can move the camera to look at the back, the left, front, the right, and it helps you just look directly in that direction. So this is directly looking at the front view of the object. You could also click and drag on the View Cube to orbit, and you could also look at, you could switch the view to an angled view. So here's the angle between front and right. You could also look at your object from a corner perspective. This helps you quickly change your view precisely. In this video, I'll show you how to orbit around the viewport in Fusion 360. Like I mentioned in the navigation and View Cube tutorials, you could orbit by holding Shift and the center mouse button. There are two different types of orbit in Fusion 360. There's Constrained Orbit, which orbits in a more controlled manner, and there's Free Orbit, which allows you to orbit around in a little bit less controlled of a manner. I prefer to use Constrained Orbit. If you don't have a mouse with the center button, with the middle mouse button, just click on the Orbit button on the bottom to orbit, and press Escape to exit that command. You could also orbit by clicking and holding the View Cube. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Look At function in Fusion 360. Let's say I have a fairly complicated model and I want to look at one of the faces directly into the face. All I have to do is click Look At and select the face that I want to look directly towards. This is helpful if you have an object that has many different angles and you can't really use the View Cube because maybe this face here doesn't align with any of these sides of the View Cube. Just click at the Look At button and have the face selected and it'll look at it. So you can see there's two ways of doing it. Either you select the face, then click Look At, or you could click Look At and then select the face. That's a quick overview of the Look At command in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be going over the display settings in Fusion 360. First, there's the visual style. You can look at your object in a shaded view, shaded with hidden edges, or shaded with visible edges, or different variations of wireframe. I prefer to use shaded with visible edges only. However, sometimes I like to use shaded with hidden edges. This allows you to see through the object, and it has a dashed line for all the edges that are behind these faces. Another interesting visual style is wireframe, as well as wireframe with visible edges only. Sometimes I use this if I want to get a quick line drawing of my object. I'll just take a screenshot of the current viewport like that to get a line drawing of my object. Next, there's mesh display. I rarely use this setting. Another setting that I like to use is the environment setting. Let me switch back to shaded with visible edges only. In environment, you have dark sky, gray room, photo booth, tranquility blue, and infinity pool. Most of the time I use the default photo booth setting. I'll show you some of them. There's the dark sky. It's kind of a moody, dark version. Sometimes it's a little difficult to see. There's also gray room. Tranquility blue. I'm not sure why you would use this one. And infinity pool, which is not bad also. Kind of has a nice look to it, and it has a nice reflection on the floor. However, most of the time I just use photo booth. There's also the different effects. Right now I have all the effects turned on. If you're worried about performance and it starts lagging a little bit, you could turn some of these effect settings off, like anti-aliasing or ambient occlusion, object shadow, and ground reflection. These will speed up the program a lot, because sometimes Fusion 360, if you have a complicated model, it does start to lag down a lot. So a quick fix to that is just go to your effects here and start turning off different settings there. Next we have object visibility. You can turn off different object things like that. And another one that's pretty important is the camera. You could switch to perspective or orthographic. When I'm doing design, I usually stick with orthographic. It means there's no perspective, and objects that are far away are the exact same size as objects that are close up. See how the object kind of looks skewed in this picture? It's more accurate to real life, but when you're designing and you need to see the dimensions of different parts of your model, it's hard to tell what sizes are what and how to compare the sizes to each other when you're in perspective mode. So typically, I'll do all my modeling in orthographic mode. There's also ground plane offset. I very rarely use that setting as well. The three that I use the most are visual style. I use that a ton. Environment. I use effects a little bit if I'm worried about performance. And the camera setting, orthographic and perspective. In this video, I'll be going over the grid settings in Fusion 360. Click the Grid and Snaps button on the bottom of the screen. You could turn on the grid by checking the Layout Grid box. You could snap to grid, as well as use incremental move. I'll show you how this works now. Incremental move allows you, when you move a face, to move that face in increments. So you can see it's snapping to the grid in those increments. If I want to change the grid settings, click Grid Settings, change it from adaptive to fixed, and I could change my minor subdivisions. I'll set it to 50. You can see it working here. This is a nice feature and allows you to easily change the shape of your model very accurately. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief overview of the solid tab tools in Fusion 360. Now in Fusion 360, you'll mostly be using solid bodies. There are also surfaces and forms, sheet metal tools, but most of the time you'll be using solids. So with a solid, you could create different solids like boxes, cylinders, spheres, torus. You could also do other functions that I'll get to later on in the course. You could modify those objects. You could assemble them to moving parts, so you can make mechanisms inside of Fusion 360 that'll work just like mechanisms in real life. You can make construction planes, which I'll also get into later on in the course, as well as insert photos and other things, reference materials like that. So the solid tab, you'll be in the solid tab most of the time when you're designing your object in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be giving you a quick overview of the surface tools in Fusion 360. I actually rarely use the surface tools, if ever actually. And basically I'll give you a quick example of a use case for the surface tool. I could extrude these edges here, just like this, and you can see a surface is actually not a solid body. So it's just essentially a two-dimensional surface. And one thing I could do with this is I could actually, let's see where it is here. I could create I could thicken it like this, and I'll select the surfaces that I want to thicken. So it's actually, I'll select all of the surfaces here, and I could type in -2, and now I have a solid body from those surfaces. That's a quick use case for surfaces, and I won't be going too much into detail for surfaces. It shares a lot of the same functionality as a solid, but I find the solid tools to be much more useful. So that's a quick overview of the surface tools in Fusion 360. Fusion 360 also has some pretty cool features for sheet metal design. However, in this course, I won't be going into those features at all because this course is geared towards 3D printing. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief overview of the Tools tab in Fusion 360. So there's a lot of cool features in the Tools tab, but in this course we'll be looking at the add-ins, measure, and section analysis. Those are the most applicable for 3D printing. Add-ins, that's where we'll be making gears and different mechanical things. Measure obviously means measuring between 2 points. You can measure between 2 faces or even between edges. And then section analysis is a good feature. It allows you to cut into the shape along this plane, and you can look at a section of your object. So that's a brief overview of the Tools tab in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be going over the Create tab inside of the Solid section. The Create tab is a very, very important tab in Fusion 360. You'll spend a lot of time in it, and it has a lot of really powerful features. such as extrude, which we'll use that a lot, as well as the basic fundamental shapes, as well as patterns, where you could create an array of a body, as well as mirror, thicken, a lot of great things. So I'll be going into each one of those later on in this course. That's a quick overview of the Create tab in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be going over the Modify tab in Fusion 360. So after you create your base shape, a lot of times you'll need to modify it. And what that means is you could add like a fillet to it, or you can add a chamfer, or you could cut out the center of it, or you could combine or subtract different objects. So the Modify section tab is also a very important tab, because after you create your base shapes, typically what you'll do is you'll modify them, and that's where you'll combine different fundamental shapes, or add chamfers, fillets. You could even do press pull, which is where I could like pull it out like this. A lot of good features in Modify, not quite as important as Create, but definitely a very important section, and we'll also be using it a lot in the future lessons. So stay tuned, and that's a quick overview of the Modify tab in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief overview of the Assemble tab in Fusion 360. Now, the Assemble tab is not the easiest tab to use, but it's very powerful. This is where you could assemble different components and actually make them move, and you can make all different types of really cool mechanical things and test it out in the computer, which is really great for prototyping and things like that. So for example, I could create a joint for this gear here. So I could select this, and I'll also select that. I'll set the motion to revolve, click OK, and I'll be going into all of this into detail in later lessons, so you can learn how to do it, but really powerful. And you can see how quickly I was able to make a gear that spins, and I can make this gear spin another gear, move a lever, all different types of things. Extremely powerful, and also really cool once you know how to use it. So I'm looking forward to teaching those lessons, so stay tuned. And that's a quick overview of the Assemble tab. Basically, it's where you assemble components to make all different types of mechanical contraptions and things like that. In this video, I'll introduce you to construction planes. So in Fusion 360, one of the main things that you do to create a new body is you use what's called a sketch. So a sketch can be created on any plane. So I could choose a plane from the object here, or I could choose one of the planes from the world origin. But what if I don't want to use any of those planes? And let me just do an example of a sketch to a body really quick. So I clicked on the plane on top of this rectangular prism, and let's say I just want to make a random shape, maybe something like that, kind of a trapezoid shape. So I've created a sketch on the plane, and then I can extrude that sketch just like this. Alright, so now I have another body on top of that body. But let's say I don't want to create the sketch on that plane or on any of the world origin planes. What you could do is you could create a construction plane. And so I'll do an example of an offset plane first. So I could click on a face, and I could offset a plane just like this. And now I could do a sketch on that plane. So let's do different. Let's just make a circle. And I'll finish the sketch. Now I have a circle sketch floating in midair, and you can see here's the construction drop down, and there is the plane there. I can turn it off so you can't see it. and then I could take this sketch here and I could extrude a cylinder out of it. And that's how you could create an object offset anywhere from any plane. And there's a whole bunch of really cool, really powerful different construction planes that you could do, and I'll be getting into those in future lessons in this course, so stay tuned. And that's a general overview of construction planes. In this video, I'll give you a quick overview of the Inspect dropdown. So the only two things we'll look at in the Inspect dropdown are Measure and Section Analysis. So Measure is pretty self-explanatory. You could measure different points on a object like that. However, I'm not sure why you would want to do that really, because if you look down here on the bottom right corner, it actually will, well, if I hold Shift, it'll actually tell me two vertices, min, distance is that. And I can also do faces. So if I select one face, rotate around, and select another face, it'll actually tell me the distance between those faces. The other cool thing in Inspect is Section Analysis. I did mention that in the other lesson as well, but I'll show you it again. So basically, Section Analysis allows you to take a to view the inside of an object. So if I click this face here and I pull it in like this, you can take a section of the object. And here you can see I actually hid some text inside of my shape. So that's actually a whole, like, it's I hid the words inside of the shape basically. And I can see it when I'm doing the section analysis. So that's a cool way I like to add a watermark to some of my designs. I'll actually embed my logo inside of the print, so that way if anyone prints it, when it's printing, you can see, oh, it's from 3D Printer Academy. Just a cool Easter egg type of thing like that. So that's section analysis. It allows you to see the inside of your object. And that's a quick overview of the Inspect dropdown. In this video, I'll give you a quick overview of the Insert dropdown. The two most important things in the Insert dropdown are Decal and Canvas. In this course, we'll probably only look at Canvas, and I'll give you an example of what Insert Canvas is. Basically, you could insert a picture into your drawing. So if you click Canvas here, I can insert a photo from my computer, and I'll just pick a random photo here. This is just a screenshot from my Instagram, and you could add that image anywhere in your scene here in the viewport, but you have to pick a plane. So usually you'll probably pick one of the world origin planes like that, and you can move it around. So let's just put it here, and I'll scale it up like this. And the reason you'd want to do this is, let's say I want to trace this shape here for that marble machine. I could actually create a sketch on the same plane, and then basically what you could do is trace out that object like so. Obviously much better than that, but this is just a general idea of how it works. And then after you trace your object, you can extrude it, and then you have the object traced, and you can turn off the canvas, turn off the reference, and that's the cool thing about canvases. Another interesting thing is you could actually put the canvas onto one of your objects. So let's just do it again. I'll just use an old thumbnail from a Kickstarter project, and I'll add it to the face there. I can rotate it around like that, and OK. And there I have a photo on that shape, just like that. And I mean, you could do that for a lot of different reasons. Most of the time it'd be for reference, but I guess you could technically make it like a texture or something, but it's made basically to be to add reference drawings in to Fusion 360. So that's a quick introduction to the Insert drop-down in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll introduce you to the right-click shortcuts. The right-click shortcuts are very convenient. Basically, all you have to do is you right-click and it opens up this, I guess, dialog box here. And it has a lot of your recent things that you've done as well as some things that you would often want to do. So, for instance, one of the things I do a lot is I would move and copy. I probably use the right-click shortcut for that the most. The second thing I would use it for is setting the orbit center, and that basically is the point the camera orbits around. And I think I'll go into that later, I'm not sure, but it just sets the, I'll just show you an example. I can set the center of the orbit to say here, and now when I rotate around, it rotates around that point. So kind of a nice thing to know about. But as far as move and copy, a lot of the time, you'll use this a lot. So I'll do a quick example of this as well. Let's say I want to move this face here. Actually, I need to select the face first, and I'll right-click, move and copy. And now I can move this face, and you can even rotate the face like that. I can rotate it, well, I can't rotate that way because it just doesn't make sense to twist it like that. But I can move it in this direction, and I could also do this direction or whatever. But that's a very common thing to do, is to move or rotate something, as well as move the entire body. So I select the whole body, and I can move the entire body. A very normal thing that you'd be doing all of the time, as well as the copy feature. So I select the body, right-click, and to copy, you just click Create a Copy, select that box, and now when you move it, you have a copy of the box. So the right-click shortcut is a very important thing in Fusion 360. I use it all the time. It's very convenient because wherever I am, wherever the mouse is in the viewport, I just right-click, and here's a lot of very convenient, quick things. I think you even just right-click and drag like this. So see that I just right-clicked and dragged, and it will it like highlights that. You can see like that pie shape thing there. And so it makes it very quick to do things. So that's the right-click shortcuts in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll introduce you to sketches in Fusion 360. Sketches are extremely important in Fusion 360, and it's one of the main tools that you'll use to create whatever object that you're trying to create. So the way a sketch works is you have a lot of different options for shapes or lines that you could draw. And basically a sketch is a 2D drawing, and you could make a 3D object out of that 2D drawing. So for instance, let's say, I don't know, I'll just do an example of something that you would create. Maybe it's like a slot type of thing like this. So I could create 2 circles and a couple of lines like this, and there's my sketch. And now that I finished my sketch, I could select these faces here and extrude that, and I have my custom shaped 3D solid object. Now you may have noticed when I was drawing the sketch here that the lines are blue. And one thing that's really cool about Fusion 360 is it has a thing called constraints. So if I go back into I can right click on the timeline down here and edit that action that I did. So I could go to edit sketch. So here I'm back into my sketch again, and you can see the lines are blue. What that means is those lines are not constrained. So I could actually grab one and move it around and see how it's adjusting the sketch. And it's kind of unpredictable right now, and that's because I didn't put any planning into how I drew it at all. So you can see this thing here, that little circle, that's a tangent constraint. And what that means is this line here will always be tangent with this circle's edge here. So you can see it's never going to be a different angle from this line like this. See how this one has an angle here? There's the circle, and it angles, there's a sharp corner here. This will never have a sharp corner except for this side here. So it's always going to be in line with the circle. So it automatically adds some constraints, but all of the other things are not constrained. So let me delete everything, and I'll give you an example of a fully constrained sketch. So for instance, if I draw a line starting from the origin, it'll constrain that first point to the origin. I could control the length and the angle. So see how it's a dark black line now? Same with here. Actually, not that one. Let me do it again. I'll start from the beginning, and you actually want to type the dimension. So I'll actually type 10 millimeters and 90. And for this one here, I'll type in 10, 90. See, now it has these dimensions here. Those are the constraints. So that means this line here has to be 10 millimeters. And I could go into this constraint and change it, and that'll adjust my drawing. So it's a very powerful feature. So like here I have a triangle shape. Maybe I want it to be this side here to be smaller. I could just change it like that. And when all the lines are black, that means your sketch is fully constrained. And you can see all the constraints up here. I'll be going into each one of them in detail so you can learn all about these tools here and how to create really cool sketches that will save you. It's a little bit more work up front to make your sketch fully constrained, but it'll save you a lot of time down the road. Let's say when you're prototyping something and you need to change it, instead of redrawing everything, all you have to do is just change one dimension and your entire object will modify itself to update itself to that new dimension there like that. So in the next couple of lessons, actually I have quite a few lessons coming up here where I'll be going into each part of a sketch in detail so you could get all of the tools you need to make whatever you want to make. Sketches are very important. That's why I'll be spending a lot of time. I think I've probably, I don't know, 10 or 20 videos coming up here, 15 videos, I think. I don't know, a lot of videos coming up where I'll be going into all the different things you could do with sketches. Very important and a very cool feature of Fusion 360. So that's a quick overview of sketches in Fusion 360. One of the most important things in a sketch is a line. And it sounds very simple, but there's some things that you could do with a line that aren't the most intuitive. So select the line tool. You could also press L on the keyboard. And we want to have some sort of anchor point for our sketch, so I'll just use the world origin. I'll give it a dimension, so that way it's constrained. And now you can see I have a basic line, and it has a dimension, and I could change that dimension like that. I could also, so I'll draw another line. This time, I'll specify an angle for this line. So to access the angle text box, you want to press Tab on the keyboard, and now you can type in any custom angle. So I'll just type in 40 degrees. And if I move my mouse around, you can see that it's 40 degrees from different origins. So I can move it over here, down, anywhere like that. Still 40 degrees, but it's basing the origin off of a different point. And you can also see that I can still adjust the length. So if I press Tab again, I can add a dimension there, and now it stays solidified as that length of a line at that angle. And if I click the mouse button, it'll confirm that line. It'll have me draw another line if I want, but I'll just press Escape, and it'll clear that. And so now you can see I have a fully constrained line path here. And the last thing you do with a line is, notice there's a curve here. You can actually make curves with your line. To do that, not the most intuitive thing in the world, but what you do is you click and hold from an existing endpoint of a line. So if I click and hold and drag the mouse, it creates a curve like this. Now the weird thing is you can't really constrain it at this point. So if I let go of the mouse, it'll be, I could click this arrow here, or I could press escape to confirm that arch. So the weird thing is it's not constrained. And that's because I could still move this point here. So if I had a way to tell Fusion 360 what this dimension is here, then it will constrain this line and it'll be black and not this light blue color. Because best practices are fully constraining your sketches, unless you're doing something really quick, but usually long term it's best to constrain your sketches. So to add a dimension constraint, I'll click this dimension button here, sketch dimension, and I'll click this point, and I guess it's already, maybe I already had that point selected, but I could set this dimension here, and let's just set it to 3. Now you can see the sketch is fully constrained, so everything is locked in place. The only thing I can move is this dot here. I could change the length of that arch like that. So that's the basic line tool, and that's what you could do with it. You could also close your sketch. So let's say I want to close this here. You can see that line is also not, it's not black because it doesn't have a constraint on it. So I could add a constraint there by clicking on the line with the dimension tool and just clicking enter. So now it's fully constrained. I could change this like that, and you can see it's going to keep this arch here. So that's why if I change this value, it moves it in that direction, unless they added a different constraint somewhere else. But that's the basic functionality of the line tool for sketches. You could create either a straight line or you can make arches. And it's important to remember to always fully constrain your sketches, because you'll regret it in the future if you don't, when you want to go back and make a little change and everything gets messed up because you can't simply just go in and just type in 4.5 and have it automatically adjust all nice like that. So that's the basic line tool in Fusion 360. The next tool we have in Sketches in Fusion 360 is the Rectangle tool. This is the basic rectangle tool here, but if we click Create, we could see more options for different types of rectangles that we could create. So by default, Fusion 360 has a 2-point rectangle where you can select basically the origin point and the opposite corner. And if you type in your dimensions, 5, I'll hit Tab, and that will go to the length of the rectangle, and I could add maybe 7 there. If I click the mouse button, I have a fully constrained rectangle just like that. I could easily go in and change the dimensions. Super easy. So that's a 2-point rectangle in Fusion 360. Fusion 360 also has, this one's very useful. I'm going to skip the 3-point for now and go to the center rectangle because this one's way more useful. It basically creates the origin of the rectangle at the center, like that. That's very useful. It makes it much quicker to center a rectangle inside of a different object. And you could also just type in the dimension for that side, press Tab, and press the dimension for the other side. And if you press Enter, you have your basic rectangle shape there, and you can easily change the lengths of the sides. And notice on the center rectangle, if I change the length of a side, it's mirrored along the center point. So very, very convenient for a lot of things. And now the last rectangle tool we have is the 3-point rectangle. Basically, what you do is you essentially just create 3 points. And let me do that again. So go to the rectangle, I'll click this point here, click this point here, and then I can pull it out. And basically, I guess the point of this is you could change the direction or the angle of the rectangle, but I don't think I've ever used the 3-point rectangle tool. I definitely have a lot more use cases where I use the 2-point rectangle and the center rectangle. And most of the time it's just the 2-point rectangle. So that's the rectangle tool in Fusion 360. So the next tool we have in Fusion 360 for sketches is the circle tool. The default circle tool is very basic. You basically just determine what diameter you want for the circle, and you could easily change it after the fact if you want. And that's the basic circle function. But there is also a 2-point circle, and this would be useful for a situation like this. Let's say I want a circle centered between these 2 lines here. I could just click there, and now I have a circle that is perfectly centered between those 2 lines. So there's also let's go to the next one, the 3-point circle. And that's very similar. I could click here, here, and here. And now I have a circle right there, kind of pushed up against this edge here, just like that. Another useful circle, and having these extra circle tools or functions, I guess, just make it easier for certain situations, like having it pushed up against this edge here. The 3-point circle made that very easy and very quick. So knowing about the special circle functions really could improve the speed of your design process. Okay, we also have the 2-tangent circle. Let's say I want a circle here. I could just click on this line, and it'll create a circle just like that with the edges connected to those 2 lines like that. Another very convenient circle creation tool. And the last one is the 3-tangent circle, where I could click on 3 lines and it'll create a circle perfectly in the middle. And you can see that one's fully constrained because each one of these points is connected to those lines like that. Whereas this circle here, I can still change the size of it. So if I gave it a diameter like that, let's just give it 5. You can see that's also fully constrained now, just like that. So that's the circle tool in Sketches in Fusion 360. So now we're getting into more of the specialized tools for sketches in Fusion 360. And this tool is the arc tool. And there are 3 different options here. You could do a simple 3-point arc, and I'll show you an example of that. Let's say I do this center point, to this center point, to this center point. And here we have a arc based off of those points there, and I can make maybe a shape like that if I wanted to. So that's a use case for that arc. Another one that we have is the center point arc. So basically you select the center point, and then you select 2 other points like that, and it creates an arc around the center point just like that. And the last one is the tangent arc. Basically what that one does is it creates a line that's tangent, or it creates an arc that's tangent to the line that you start from. So just like that, you can see it's, no matter where I go, it's still tangent with the origin line just like that. And I guess actually with that one, you could do some pretty interesting curves like that very easily. And it's all tangent to itself. So those are arcs. It's another good tool in Fusion 360. And you could create a lot more variations with your sketches like that. And they all have a constant radius. That's what an arc is in Fusion 360. You could also do splines, but a spline has a continually changing radius. So this is basically just a segment of a circle. So that's how you make arcs in Fusion 360. Next, I'll show you how to use the Polygon tool for sketches in Fusion 360. For this example, I'll be creating my sketch on the top face of this cylinder. So I'll select the top of the face, I'll click Create Sketch, and now what I'm going to do is I'll create a smaller circle, an 8mm circle, just like that, and now I'm going to go to the Polygon tool, and you can see there's three options. For this example, I'm going to do the inscribed polygon. So I'll select inscribed polygon, I'll click the center point and drag out to the edge, and you could determine the radius as well as the number of edges that the polygon has. So right now I have a 6-sided polygon, and I could change that with the tab button. Well, I can't have a 2-sided polygon. I can have triangle, square, and just like that all the way up. So for this example, I thought it'd be interesting to do a hexagon, because you could like make an indent into a shape for, let's say, nuts and bolts to hold the head of the bolt. So I'll create the inscribed polygon just like that. I'll finish the sketch. I'll select the hexagon like that, and I'll extrude it down -10, or let's just go -4, just like that. So now I have this polygon cut out of this cylinder. So I know I haven't really gotten into extrude yet, but it's a little sneak peek into that feature, and with the tools you know already, you should be able to do a lot already, but I recommend continuing to go through all of these lessons here, because it'll give you a really strong foundation and it'll really help your design skills. So I highly recommend going through each one of these lessons, because I'll be going through every single tool, and you will have a lot more skills if you're able to know each tool and what exactly it does, and it'll just make you a much better designer. So that's the Polygon tool. Oh wait, I didn't go through the other, let me show you the other versions of the Polygon tool as well. They're fairly similar. So let's quickly go through these. We have edge polygon and circumscribed. So that's essentially the same thing, however it goes on the outside of the circle, like that. And then the other one is the edge polygon. So I could select 2 points here, and it'll create a polygon based on that edge, just like that. So that's the Polygon tool in Fusion 360. Next, I'll show you how to use the Ellipse tool for sketches in Fusion 360. The Ellipse tool is fairly simple, and there's only one option. You basically pick the center point and the first dimension, and then the second dimension. And that's essentially all it is for the Ellipse tool. So that's the Ellipse tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use slots in sketches in Fusion 360. Go to Create, down to Slot, and you have a few different options here. We have center to center slot, so I could select this point here and this point here, and those 2 points will be the center of the circles on the ends of the slot. So you can see just like that. And there we have our slot there, and we can extrude it up or down if you wanted to, but I'm going to keep going and show you the other versions of the slot functions. Slot function. We have an overall slot, So I could do something like this from this point here, and there. So there's my slot inside of that rectangle. You could also do a 3-point arc slot. This one's pretty interesting as well. Let's say I wanted to go from this point to this point. Actually, I don't want to do that. Let's do one more time. I want to do this point, and that point. I could create an arc like that. So that's a pretty interesting one. And the last one is my favorite slot function here, or slot tool. It's the center point arc slot, and basically all you need to do is select the center point and then select the starting point of the arc and the ending point of the arc. Let's go to there, and then you just pull out the width like that. And then, for example, if I finish the sketch, I could select this area and I could extrude it in like this. And now I have this very nice cutout slot inside of my shape, just like that. So a very convenient feature. That is the slot tool in Fusion 360. The next tool in Sketches for Fusion 360 is the Spline tool. Now, when you first start a Fusion 360 project, you usually have a blank screen like this, and usually what I do is I create a sketch and I just pick one of the planes on the origin. So I've skipped that step on all the other Sketches videos, so I thought I should show that just to show you where I was getting started. So the Spline tool is very nice because it lets you make very customized curves, basically any curve that you want. So to use the Spline tool, you basically could just select areas, you create points just like this, and then to end, you want to click on this check mark here just like that. So the Spline has a bunch of nodes that you could click on, and you can move those kind of handles just like that, and you could change the shape of your spline. So it's a very convenient tool for making very customized curved shapes just like this. I could offset the spline, connect the edges, and then extrude it. And there's my custom shape that I designed with the spline. So that's how you use splines in Fusion 360. So this tool is a little bit obscure, and I'm not exactly sure what use cases it has, but I'll still show it anyways. It's the Conic Curve, and there's a lot of, I guess, theory behind it that I'm not too familiar with, but it has to do something with second order linear partial differential equations or something. But it's been a long time since I've taken differential equations, so I don't remember any of that. But basically, you could create different parabolic, hyperbolic, or elliptic lines just like that. I'm not sure exactly what the use case is for this, but you can make these shapes if you want to. So that's the Conic Curve tool in Fusion 360. Next tool I haven't used that much either, so I'm going to go pretty quickly through it. It's the point tool, and essentially you could create points and you could connect the points with lines. And I'm not exactly sure what the use case is for this because I could just take a line and do the exact same thing. But that's the point tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the text tool for sketches in Fusion 360. The text tool is a very nice tool and it's very useful. And it's also a very fun tool because you could personalize all your work with this tool. So I'll create a sketch on this face here. And I don't know why it rotated around like that, but I'll just rotate it back to normal. And I'll click Create and Text. So there's two options here. You could click Text on Path, which means maybe I could put it on this path here. It even looks like it goes through the object, and I can line it up with that line on the back of the object. But I want to do text anywhere on my plane here. So I'll do just the basic text tool, and I'll select the bounding box here for my text, and click. Okay, and you can see the text is very large. So what I'll do is I'll change the height of the text. I'll make it 2.5. Let's go 4. Nope, I'll do 3. So 3 works like that. I'll center space it and center it in the middle like that. I'll type in 3D Printer Academy, just like that, but with a 3. And I'll make it bold. And what you could also do is you could also change the font. So I like to use Avenir. Next. Just like that. I'll probably make it just a little bit smaller. 2.7. Maybe 2.5. There we go. So that's how you create text. And then what you could do with the text. It also has a character spacing tool, which is nice. So I could space it out a little bit. Let's do 10. Okay. And then I could click OK and finish sketch. So with this, what I could do is select the text, and now I could extrude it. And let's say I wanted to make a stamp. You could very easily make your own custom stamps this way. Or if I wanted to make just a custom little label thing here with my name on it, I could cut inside of the shape like that, and now I have a little block with 3D Printer Academy written on it, and I could 3D print that and put it on my desk or anything like that. So the text tool is very useful. You could customize all of your 3D prints or all of your designs. You could put your name or your logo, anything like that. So that's the text tool in Fusion 360. So this next tool is very useful, and I use it all the time. It's the mirror tool. So to use the mirror tool, let's say I have my own line drawing here. Just something random like this. And so let's say I want to mirror this onto that side. So Fusion 360 makes it very easy. What I could do is I could create a construction line. So I'll create a normal line, just like this. I'll select this line, and I'll change the line type to construction, just like that. So now it's a dashed line, so it's actually not a line, it's just basically a reference line. And now to mirror this, all I need to do is click the mirror button here, and I'll select my lines that I want to mirror, just like this. So I have my 10 lines here selected, and I'll click the mirror line, I'll select that, and I'll do this construction line here. And now you can see my custom line drawing has been mirrored to this side, and that's very convenient. I use the mirror function a ton, so that's how you do mirrors for your sketches in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the circular pattern tool for sketches in Fusion 360. The circular pattern tool is very powerful and very useful, and I use it a lot in my designs. So go to Create, and so actually before we do the circular pattern, we'll need something to rotate in a circular pattern. So what I'll do is I'll create a circle on the end of this line, maybe just a 5mm circle, just like that. And I want this to repeat in a circular pattern around like this. So I'll select my circle, and I'll go to Circular Pattern. You'll need to select the center point, and then you can choose how many times you want it to be repeated. So I'll just increase this till I get a good amount so it's evenly spaced just like that, and click OK. I'll click Finish Sketch. So now what I could do is I could select all of these areas here, and what I could do is extrude it, maybe 5, and now I have these evenly spaced cylinders in the perfect circular pattern. So that's the circular pattern tool in Fusion 360. Next, I'll show you how to use the rectangular pattern tool in Fusion 360. So I have this circle shape here that I want to repeat in rows and columns. To do this, I'll use the rectangular pattern tool. Now there's two different types of distance types here. There's extent and spacing. So first I'll need to select my object. I'll change my distance to, let's say, 30, and I could increase the quantity. Let's just do 6 of them, and then I could do that also for the rows. So I'll do 6, and I'll change the distance to 30, and I could change the direction. Let's see if I could do -30. Yes, I could do -30 to get it to go down. And now I have my circle repeating in a rectangular pattern. I could also make it go in both directions, like that. Or I could use spacing. So for the spacing, it automatically converted it to 6mm. But now let's say if I do 0, it's stacked on top of each other. 1, 5. So if I do 5, because that's the diameter, so it's from center point to center point, it looks like. And I do get, quantity, I want quantity 6, and distance -5, and they should all be touching just like that in a rectangular pattern. So that's how you use the rectangular pattern tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Fillet tool in Fusion 360. The Fillet tool is really important because in the real world, corners are not infinitely sharp like they are in the computer. It's very difficult to get a perfectly sharp corner, and actually you never really want a perfectly sharp corner in your design because it'll either be very uncomfortable to hold or it won't look that great. Even objects in the real world that look like they have sharp corners are actually slightly rounded and have a slight fillet on them, just because that's how it works in reality versus on the computer. So to use the Fillet tool, just click the Fillet button, and you can either select 2 lines, or you can select the corner point, just like this. And if you select multiple corners, you could change the radius of all of them, just like that. It's a very convenient tool, and I highly recommend using fillets in your design because it'll make the designs look, whoops, what did I do there? It'll make the designs look much more professional and much more polished. So that's the Fillet tool in Fusion 360. It's a very nice tool, and it really improves the quality of your designs and really makes it look extra good. So I highly recommend the Fillet tool. It's very convenient. I use it all the time in almost all of my designs. You could even do it on a solid body and round off the top like that. So it's a very nice tool in Fusion 360. That's the Fillet tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Trim tool in Fusion 360 for modifying your sketches. The Trim tool is this scissors icon here. You could also access it by pressing T on the keyboard. And basically what the Trim tool does is it will trim a line or a curve to any line that intersects it. So I can trim off this portion of the circle like that, or I could trim a line just like this, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Most of the time it will remove your constraints, so if I trim this line here, you see it'll break a lot of constraints, and that's what this warning is down here in the bottom. So you'll have to reconstrain your sketch, but that's how the Trim tool works in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Extend tool in Fusion 360. You can access the Extend tool by going to the Modify drop-down and clicking on Extend. And actually, basically, before I do that, let me trim off this line here. Okay, and now I'll extend that line back to this line. So all Extend does is basically, if you hover over an existing line, it'll predict the length it needs to go until it reaches the next line. And if there is no line, like you can see in this situation here, I'm not sure what defines that distance, but it doesn't know exactly where to go. So in this case, I think it kind of gets a little bit confused, but if there's a clear line in the same direction as the line, then it will extend a line just like that. It also, if you remember, we trimmed the circle here, it'll actually basically untrim, or I guess extend, that arc of the circle back to how we had it before we trimmed it. So that's how the Extend tool works in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you what the Break tool does in Fusion 360. To access the Break tool, go to Modify and click Break. So what Break does is, actually before I click that, I'll hover over this line here. You can see this line goes across this entire distance here. So if I select this line and click Delete, then it deletes that entire line. So what Break does, if I could get that line to come back, there it is. So what Break does is it'll essentially break a line where any other line intersects it. And if you hover over the line, you see it gives you a preview of where it'll break that line. So let's say I break just this line here. You can see now that line has been split into two, and this line here still hasn't been split into two. So if I break that line, now each of these lines here are split into two, just like that. So that's the Break tool in Fusion 360. You could easily change the scale of your sketch by using the Sketch Scale tool. It's found underneath the Modify drop-down. So basically you'll have to select any of the entities that you want to scale. So I'll actually select all of it, and I'll pick a point from where I want it to scale from. So I'll have it scale from my origin point here, and now I could type in a number for the scale factor. So let's say I want to make it twice as big. I'll just type in 2, and now you can see my sketch is now scaled twice as large as it was before. It's a pretty neat feature, it's pretty useful. So that's the sketch scale tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I will introduce you to the Offset tool in Fusion 360. The Offset tool is very useful and I use it quite often. To access the Offset tool, click this button here in the Modify section of this top toolbar. Select the line that you'd like to offset, and you see that it will actually select tangent, or it'll have a chain selection is what they call it here. So if I have this checkbox selected here, chain selection, it will select all of the lines that are chained together. If I uncheck this box here, it will only select just the line that I am hovering over. So for this example, I'll turn on chain selection. I'll click on this line here, and I'll select a dimension for the offset. So that's how you use the Offset tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how to use the Move and Copy tool in Fusion 360 for sketches. There are a couple of different ways to access the Move and Copy tool in Fusion 360. The most convenient way is to right-click and drag your mouse down to the bottom left. The other way you could access it is in the Modify section of the toolbar. You could also press M on the keyboard. For this example, I will right-click and go to Move and Copy. Next, you will need to select the objects that you would like to move or copy. So the first example I'll show you will just be a basic move. I could select all the objects that I want to move, and it automatically sets a pivot point here with some arrows that I could click and hold. So actually that didn't work. Let me try to set the pivot here. So I'll click Set Pivot, and let's click this point here, and be sure to click the Done check mark either here or over here. And now I should be able to move. Okay, so the reason we can't move this object is because it's constrained to the origin. So if I hover my mouse over here, you can see these three constraints. So I haven't really gotten into constraints that much, but this will be a little bit of a preview, and it's a good time to show you actually. So if I hover my mouse over this point here, you can see three constraints. I can actually select each one of them, and if I hold the Shift key down, I can select all three constraints. If I press Delete, it'll delete those constraints, and now my sketch has turned blue, which means it's no longer constrained to the origin point. And now I should be free to move it. So this time I'll press M on my keyboard. So now by pressing M on the keyboard, I've opened up the Move and Copy panel here. I'll drag and select the entire sketch. And now, when I pull on this arrow here, it'll move the sketch. You could also determine where you want the pivot to be located by clicking Set Pivot. And let's move the pivot to this point here. Be sure to click Done. And now you can move your sketch from that pivot. And that's useful if you want to rotate your sketch just like that. So the other thing you could do is you could create a copy and move the copy. To do that, all you have to do is click Create Copy. Just click on this check box here, and now when you move, you're actually moving a copy of the sketch. So let's say I wanted to rotate this 180, just like that. I now have a copy of this sketch rotated 180. And press OK to confirm. So that's how you use the Move and Copy tool in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you the different settings in the Sketch palette for Fusion 360. The Sketch palette is located on the right side of the viewport when you're in Sketch mode. You can see there's different options here, and you can select different checkboxes to change different options for the sketch. We've used this before for the construction line type, so I could click on a line. Let's say this line here, and if I press on construction, it'll make that line a construction line. So it's no longer a solid line, it's just basically a reference line. Another good feature is the look at option. So let's say I'm not looking directly perpendicular to the sketch. Let's say I'm at an angle like this. If I want to get back to the original view, perpendicular to the plane of the sketch, all you have to do is click this button here, look at, and it'll point you back up looking directly at the sketch. You could also turn it off and on and off the sketch grid. Snapping. I actually am not quite sure what the slice option is here. You could show the profile. So that's the highlighted profile there. It'll show you the areas, as well as points, dimensions, constraints, and projected geometries. So what projected geometries is it's, let's say I had a cube behind this. So I could probably do that really quickly actually. Let's just put a cube, I'll put a box, and I'll put it underneath the sketch here. I'll just make it random dimensions, and I'll just move it down like this. And let's say I move this here and pull it in like that. And if I want to create a sketch on this plane here, if I create a line, it'll let me snap to the lines on that shape that I just created. But it's actually projecting that line through the shape. So if I rotate here, you can see there's actually there's no line to snap to here, but it wants to snap to this line here because it's projecting this bottom line here up through the body or the object to this top surface here. So I'll click look at and go to the top of it, and if I click on this spot here and here, you can see now it's showing this purple line here, which means it has snapped to a projected geometry. And you could turn that on and off just like that. So it's nice if you have a certain shape just like this, and I wanted to make this line go, this point here be directly on top of this line, it'll automatically snap to that projected geometry. And the last thing in the sketch palette is 3D sketch. So if I select this, I can now sketch in 3 dimensions, which is a pretty neat feature. So it's also a little tricky to use, but now you can see I have the 3 directions here. So if I click this origin point here and I drag up, you can see it snaps to the Z axis here, or it could snap to the X or the Y, just like that. So if I wanted to make a line going out of the plane, I could click just like this, and now you can see I have a line. So now my sketch is actually in 3 dimensions. So that is the sketch palette in Fusion 360. It helps a lot with, maybe if I click look at it again, actually I'll go back into the original sketch here. So if your sketch is getting a little bit messy like this, it's really nice to be able to turn off dimensions every once in a while, or if you don't really want to see the constraints at the moment, you can make your sketch very clear and easy to look at. And when you want to turn those options back on, it's very easy, just a click of the button just like that. So that is the sketch palette in Fusion 360. In this video, I will give you a quick overview of sketch constraints and why they're so important and why they're so powerful. So let's say I have a basic object like this, and it has some holes in it just like that. Now let's say I've just finished designing this part here, and it actually turns out it's not quite the right dimensions, and maybe these two holes here are too close together, and maybe I want to make this whole shape a lot longer. Now without constraints and without parametric modeling, I would have to recreate this entire object, and that would be a big hassle and it would take a long time. But with the power of constraints and the power of parametric modeling, it's very easy to change your design at any stage of the process. So I'll go down here to my sketch, I'll right click it and go to Edit Sketch, and here you see I have a sketch here that's fully constrained. So like I was saying, maybe I want to make the shape a lot longer and less of a square shape. So all I have to do is go to this constraint here, and let's make it 25 instead of 15. And notice what happens. This hole automatically moves where it's supposed to. These lines all move where they're supposed to. And everything just does exactly what it's supposed to, all automatically. Now if I click Finish Sketch, you can see I have a finished part that has been stretched to how I want it to be now. And let's say maybe these holes are also too big. I could go back into my sketch, and I have all of the holes, all of the circles here are constrained, and they're all dimensioned to this dimension here, 2 millimeters in diameter. So instead of having to go through all three of them, I could just change this here to, let's go to 1.5, and you can see all three holes changed automatically. It's not the biggest deal when you just have 3 holes, but let's say you had 9 holes or 12 holes, and it'd be a lot of work to go through each one and change it. But this way you could quickly change anything. And maybe these corners here, I wanted it to match the same dimensions as this, maybe, I don't know. Let's make it 1.5, and you can see everything has automatically adjusted. The circles are even connected to the center point of this arc here. So if I make this 4, you can see the circles move just like that, and I could change this dimension here to maybe 4, I don't know. But it makes it very easy to quickly change the design of your part. Same with this circle here. This circle is in a more random spot compared to these two, which are just on the corners. Let's say I want this circle to be a little bit closer here, just change the dimension, and you can see how easy it is to change any part of your sketch. And by changing your sketch, you actually change the entire part, and you could do any modification in the past, and it will apply all the changes to the future items on the timeline. It's a very, very nice feature, one of the best features in Fusion 360. So I highly recommend using constraints and fully dimensioning your sketches, so that way if you want to make a change in the future, it's very easy and everything updates automatically. Very nice feature. That is a quick overview of sketch constraints in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how the horizontal and vertical constraint works in sketches for Fusion 360. This is the horizontal vertical constraint button here, and what it does is, let's say I draw 2 lines here, and they're slightly crooked just like that. To make them perfectly perpendicular, or actually just vertical and horizontal, it doesn't have to be perpendicular to this line here. All you need to do is click on the horizontal vertical constraint, and you can see it automatically adjusts the lines here to always remain vertical or horizontal. And because they're still blue, I could still move them just like that. So you can actually see I could move it in both directions. I could pull it up and out just like that. But no matter where I move it, even if I drag the line, it still remains horizontal and vertical. So that's the horizontal and vertical constraint for sketches in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how to use the Coincident constraint in Fusion 360. The Coincident constraint is very useful. Let's say I have a line just like this, and you can actually see here, jumping back a little bit to the last lesson on horizontal and vertical constraints, it automatically has added the vertical constraint if I'm close to vertical or close to horizontal. So let's add a line here. And now let's say I want this point here to connect to this line here. All you have to do is click the Coincident constraint. Click on the point, and then click on the line. And now you can see that this line is always connected to this point here, just like that. And there is the constraint here. If you want to delete it, you can just click it and press delete. And now it's no longer stuck to that line. I could re-add it back just like this, and now no matter how I move this line, that point will always stay connected to this line just like that. And that is the Coincident constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how to use the tangent constraint in Fusion 360. Let's say I want to draw a line here that connects these two circles. Let's say I want to create a slot. So what I could do, I'll zoom in here and go towards these circles here to make my slot. I could click on, actually let's use the Coincident constraint as well. So I'll just create an arbitrary line here that has no constraints at all. It's just floating on the plane, just like that. I'll create two of these lines with no constraints at all. I'll use the Coincident constraint here, and I'll connect this point to the circle and this other point to this circle, and I'll do the same for the 2 points on the other line. Okay, so now to use the tangent constraint, the tangent constraint will basically align these lines here to be tangent with the circle. And if I make it tangent with both circles, I'll get a perfect custom slot. So let's click on tangent here. All I have to do is select the line, click the circle, select the line again, and I'll click the other circle. Now you can see it's actually fully constrained. And I'll do the same thing with the second line, just like that. So now we have a perfect slot by using the tangent function, or the tangent tool. And let's see, actually, I'm curious if I adjust this, if it'll adjust the slot perfectly. Let's say I want to move it really far. Yep. So that's the beauty of constraints. It adjusted all of my lines perfectly. No need to go back into it and do anything manually. I can even stretch it out even further. Or let's say I wanted it really close to the wall, back where it was before. That is how that works basically. So that is the tangent tool in Fusion 360 Sketches. In this video, I'll show you how to use the equal constraint in Fusion 360. So let's say I wanted to create a circle on this point here, and I want this circle to be the same size as all of the other circles. So I'll just click an arbitrary diameter here, and you can see it's not constrained yet because there's no set diameter. I could change it to any diameter that I want, but it's not an exact value. So to make it be the same as the other circles, all I have to use is the equal constraint. So you just click on the equal button here, and I'll select, or I'm already selected on the circle, and I'll select the circle I want it to be equal to. Just like that. So now if I change this circle, it'll change all of my circles, including the one I just added, to be the same diameter as this circle here. So that's how you use the equal tool in Fusion 360. It also works for lines as well. So let's say I have a line on the center point and it's 4, and I create another line on this center point and I don't give it a length. I could also, so right now I could still move it here. It's showing as it being fully constrained, but I'm not sure how it is if I can move this like this. But let's say I want it to be the same length as this one here. All I have to do is click equal this line here, and then the line I want it to be equal to. So now if I change this line to a 3, it'll automatically adjust that line. So that's the equal constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the parallel constraint in Fusion 360. So let's say I have two lines that are going across my part just like this, and I want these lines to always be parallel with each other. Then all I have to do is use the parallel constraint button here. Select the first line that I want the other line to be parallel with, select the second line, and now you can see my two lines are automatically parallel. And if I move this line like this, you can see the other line will always remain parallel. And it actually works if I move the other line as well. So you can see both my lines are always parallel. So that's the parallel constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how to use the perpendicular constraint in Fusion 360 sketches. So the first thing I want to do before I use the perpendicular constraint is constrain these two lines here. And I could set the angle here by selecting these two lines just like this, and I could click this sketch dimension tool here, and that'll let me set the angle between these two lines. So I'll pick 120. The next thing I'll do is determine the distance between these two parallel lines. And I'll do it just like this, and maybe they're 1.5, just like that. So now to make a line perpendicular to these lines, I'll just create a line here. And I could use the perpendicular constraint. I'll click the starting line first, then the second line, and now I have this line perpendicular to my parallel lines here, just like that. I think it will also automatically make it perpendicular. Yeah, so if you see that square at the corner there, that means it's 90 degrees and perpendicular to that line. So it's two ways of doing it. You could do the automatic way, or you could force it to be perpendicular by creating a line at an arbitrary angle and then clicking the perpendicular button, and it will make that line perpendicular. So that's how you use the perpendicular constraint in Fusion 360 sketches. In this video, I'll introduce you to the Fix Unfix constraint in Fusion 360 sketches. The Fix Unfix constraint essentially will lock the item of your sketch. So let's say I want to keep these two parallel lines here locked. All I need to do is click this lock button and select the two lines. And now if I try to change this dimension here, let's say I want to make it 3, it won't let me because these two lines are fixed into that position there. So they're essentially locked. So that is the Fix Unfix constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the midpoint constraint in Fusion 360. This triangle up here represents midpoint, and you'll see that when you create a line or any shape, if you go to the midpoint of a line, you'll see that triangle pop up. That means that is the midpoint of a line. So let's say I create a line here, and I'll make it just a non-constrained, just a random line sitting just like this. Let's say I want to make it parallel to this line and have it be connected to the midpoint. So what I'll do is, actually I think I said parallel but I meant perpendicular. I'll make it perpendicular by using the perpendicular constraint. And now I want to set it to the midpoint. So I'll click on the triangle midpoint button up here, select that point of the line, and then select the line that I want it to connect to the midpoint of. And it will automatically snap the line to the midpoint of the other line. And I'll do it again here. Let's create another line. Let's just put it here, just like this. And let's see if it'll work even if it's not connected. I'll click this point here, and I'll click the line that I want it to snap to the midpoint, and you can see it automatically moves to the midpoint of that line. So that's the midpoint constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Concentric constraint in Fusion 360 sketches. Let's say I have a circle, and it is a 5 millimeter, actually I'll do a 4 millimeter, no, I'll do a 3 millimeter diameter circle. And let's say I want this circle, the midpoint of this circle, to be directly on top of the midpoint of this circle here. To do that, I'll use the concentric constraint, and I'll select the midpoint of this, actually I'll select the circle that I want to line up with the other circle, and then I'll select the other circle, and that will move my 3 millimeter diameter circle directly to the same position as the destination circle. And I'll do that one more time. If I want to move this circle here to the same point here, I just use concentric. I'll click the big circle and then the small circle, and now I have my two circles with the same origin point. So that's the concentric constraint in Fusion 360. In this video, I will show you how to use the collinear constraint